What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your Rock Zone 8. As you can see, it comes with the receiver itself. You also get a Bluetooth antenna and an FM radio antenna. It also comes with a wireless remote, 2 rack ears, and a power cable. So the first thing we can do for our setup is attach the Bluetooth antenna and the FM radio antenna. The Bluetooth antenna will strengthen the connection between your receiver and your Bluetooth device like your smartphone or tablet, while the FM radio antenna will strengthen the radio signal. So to attach the Bluetooth antenna, you're going to line up the end of the antenna to the Bluetooth antenna port on the back of the receiver, screw it on just like this, and once you can't tighten it up anymore, you can then raise the antenna up. You're going to do the exact same thing with the FM radio antenna, so you're going to line up the end of the antenna to the FM antenna port on the back of the receiver, tighten up the end like this until you can't any further, and then you can raise the antenna up. The next thing we can do is attach the rack ears, but this isn't necessary unless you're planning to mount the rack into your rack unit. We'll go over how to set them up though in case you do want to add the rack ears. If you look on each side of the receiver, you'll see these 2 screws here towards the front, and we're gonna use these to attach the rack ears. So you can take your screwdriver and unscrew these. Once the screws are out, you're gonna line up these holes of the rack ears to the holes on the sides of your unit. Line these screws back up to these holes. Then you can take your screwdriver and tighten up these screws to secure the ears to the receiver. Now the receiver itself is 2U, so you just want to make sure you have that amount of spacing in your rack unit. The last thing we can do for the initial setup is take our power cable and plug it into the back of the receiver, then plug the other end into your power outlet. Now I'm going to go ahead and power on the receiver. So before we dive in, let's go over all of the controls, inputs, and outputs so we can better understand the Rock Zone 8. So starting with the front, we have the zone section over here. There are 4 different zones that we can use, and each zone has a left and a right channel. Each zone also has a stereo and a mono switch. So when this button is unpressed, each zone will be set to stereo mode, where you have the stereo separation between the left channel and the right channel. And when you press this button in, it will switch each zone to mono mode, where the left and right channels become mono channels. You even have 2 separate volume knobs for the right channel and left channel, so you can fine-tune the mix yourself. Each channel is also 4 ohm stable, which gives you plenty of options for the speakers you want to set up to each zone or channel. Now moving on to the center of the receiver, you have the LED display. Underneath the display, you have the 1/4-inch microphone input to connect a microphone to the receiver, and you even have a microphone volume knob to adjust the volume for the microphone. Next to that, you have the 2-band EQ with the treble and bass knob to fine-tune the sound coming out of the Rock Zone 8. You can use the treble knob to boost or cut the high-end frequencies, and you can use the bass knob to boost or cut the low-end frequencies. You also have the balance knob that acts as a pan knob between the left and right channels of the receiver, so you can use this along with the left and right volume knobs for each zone. Next to the balance knob, we have the main volume knob to control the volume of everything coming out of the receiver. Now there are plenty of ways to listen to music through the Rock Zone 8, including the USB input here on the front. You also have the music playback buttons for the USB mode over here. On the right of the receiver, you have the input section, so if you have multiple devices plugged into the receiver at the same time, you can pick which one you want to hear as the main source. For example, if you want to hear the USB device that's plugged into the front, you're just going to press the USB button in the input section. If you want to hear the Bluetooth device that's connected to the receiver, you're going to press the Bluetooth button, and so on and so forth. So to set up a Bluetooth device like a smartphone or tablet, I'm going to press the Bluetooth button here. When you see this light blinking, it means that it's looking for a device to connect to. So we can go into the Bluetooth settings of our smartphone or tablet, search for the device that reads Rock Zone 8, click on it to pair, and then it will read Rock Zone 8 connected once it's all set. You'll also want to make sure that the volume on your music device is set to either 75% or 1 notch below full. In addition to Bluetooth and USB, you also have 2 aux buttons so you can set up your aux devices. And there's also the optical/coax button to hear from your optical or coax device. We also have the FM radio section, and we can use these buttons here to switch the channel, and the auto button to scan between different stations. And then we have the FM button to set the receiver to FM radio mode. On the back, we have the speaker output section, so we can use these to connect our speakers to the receiver. Again, you have 4 different zones that you can use. Each zone has a left and a right channel, and each channel is 4 ohm stable. We also have the digital audio input section, and this is where we would connect our optical or coax devices. The optical input is covered by this plastic piece here, so you're just going to want to make sure to pull that out before plugging in your optical device. With the optical and coax inputs, we can set up our gaming systems, televisions, etc. Next to that, we have the antenna inputs for the Bluetooth antenna and the FM radio antenna. Underneath, we have the pre-out section, and we have 2 different RCA outputs that we can use to expand our setup further with any powered speakers or subwoofers. And next to that, we have the audio input section where we have 2 different RCA aux inputs. We can use these inputs to connect our DVD or CD players, record players with an RCA output, or anything else with an RCA output. So the next thing we can do for our setup is connect our speakers to the Rock Zone 8. Before we connect our speakers, we have to consider the type of speakers we want to use. Remember, the channels on each of our zones are 4 ohm stable, so this gives us a few different options on the type of speakers we can use. For example, we can set up 1 4 ohm speaker per left and right channel. We can also set up 2 8 ohm speakers per left and right channel, which brings it down to a 4 ohm load. And we can even set up 4 16 ohm speakers per left and right channel, which again brings it down to a 4 ohm load. You can set up multiple speakers through parallel wiring, and we actually have a video on how to parallel wire your speakers in case you want to check that out. So with all these different options, the one thing you don't want to do is set up any speakers that are 2 ohm stable, because that can risk damaging your receiver and or your speakers. And these speakers are 4 ohms, so we're going to set up 1 speaker per left and right channel on each zone. We'll start with 1 zone at a time here. So we're going to go to the back of our receiver and unscrew the terminals of whichever zone that we want to use first. So I'm going to go to zone 1 and loosen up these terminals here. So you have a positive and negative terminal for the left channel and a positive and negative terminal for the right channel. So I'm going to go 1 channel at a time, starting with the left channel. I'm going to take my speaker wire. I'm going to plug the red positive wire into the positive terminal. I'm going to tighten up this terminal so that the speaker wire is secure. Then we're going to do the same thing with the black negative wire and plug that into the negative terminal, then tighten it up to lock it in place. Then we're going to take the other ends and plug them into the positive and negative terminals on the back of our speaker. So now the speaker for the left channel of zone 1 is all good to go. And we're going to do the exact same thing for the right speaker for zone 1. So again, we'll take 1 end of our speaker wire, plug the red wire into the positive terminal for the right channel, then plug the black wire into the negative terminal for the right channel. Then we'll take the other end of our speaker wire and plug them into the positive and negative terminals on the next speaker. Alright, so our speakers are all set here for zone 1, and we can follow these same exact steps if we wanted to set up more speakers to any of the remaining zones. So using those steps, I'm going to go ahead and set up these speakers to zone 2. Now remember, each zone has a stereo and mono switch, so you can decide whether you want your zones to be in stereo or in mono. You can leave the button unpressed to have it set in stereo mode, or you can press the button in to set it to mono mode. Once our speakers are all set up to our zones, we can use the left and right volume knobs to raise the volume of the left and right speakers on each zone. And we'll also want to make sure to raise the main volume knob here so that we can hear everything coming out of the receiver. So now I'm going to play some music so we can hear how the speakers sound. Oh yeah, sounds good. So you're hearing zone 1 over here and zone 2 over here. just hearing zone 1. Really cool. Then I can bring zone 2 back in. Yeah. And I can lower zone 1. So now we're just hearing zone 2. Sounds good. And I can bring them both back in. Now we're hearing it on both sides again. Now we also have the option to set up our TV to the Rock Zone 8 using either the coax input or the optical input. For today, we'll go over how to set it up using the optical input, but you're gonna follow similar steps if you wanna set it up through the coax input. For this setup, you'll wanna make sure that the optical output can be used for audio, and it should say something like audio out optical if it can. For this setup, you're gonna need an optical cable that looks something like this. So you're gonna take one end of your optical cable and plug it into the optical audio output on the back of your TV. After you plug it in, the other end of your cable should be lighting up red, letting you know that the signal is running through the cable. So then you're gonna take that other end and plug it into the optical input on the back of your receiver. And before you do that, just make sure to remove the covering here over the optical input. The next thing you can do is go into the sound settings of your TV and switch the audio output to optical. And you can even go into the advanced settings and switch the audio format to PCM. Lastly, you'll want to go to your receiver and set the audio input to optical so that you're hearing everything from the TV coming out of your system. Also be sure to raise the left and right volume knobs for whichever zones or speakers you're using, and be sure to raise the main volume knob as well. So because the receiver has a microphone input and you can set it up to your TV or Bluetooth device, the Rock Zone 8 makes for a perfect karaoke setup. To set up your microphone, you're gonna need a female XLR to 1/4 inch cable and a dynamic microphone like this one here. You'll plug the XLR end into your mic. Then you're gonna plug the other end into the 1/4 inch mic input on the front of the receiver. Next, you'll wanna use the microphone volume knob next to the input to raise the volume for the mic. And now if I turn on my microphone,
check 1, 2, you should be able to hear my voice coming out of the speakers.
Now for the music for our karaoke setup, we can either use our TV that's connected to the receiver, or we can set up a Bluetooth device like a smartphone or tablet. You can go back earlier in the video to find out how to set up your TV to the receiver in case you need some help. So again, to set up a Bluetooth device, we're gonna go to our receiver and set it to Bluetooth mode. To set the receiver to Bluetooth mode, you're just gonna press the Bluetooth button here on the front. Once you do that, the Bluetooth light will be blinking, letting you know that it's looking for a device to connect. Next, we can go into the Bluetooth settings of our phone or tablet, search for the device that reads Rock Zone 8, and click on it to pair, and then it's gonna read Rock Zone connected once you're all set. You can use the main volume knob to control the volume of the music coming out of the speakers. You'll also want to make sure to raise the volume knobs of whichever zones that you're using, and make sure that the volume is turned up on the tablet itself. From here, you can use the YouTube app to search for any karaoke version of a song, read the lyrics on the screen, use the microphone to sing along, while the music and your voice is coming out of the speakers.
You can dance, you can jive, having the time of your life. Ooh, see that girl, watch that scene, digging the dancing queen. Woo!
Along with our speakers here, we can expand our setup even further by using the pre-outputs to set up a powered speaker or powered subwoofer. To do that, we'll need an RCA cable like this one here, and we're gonna plug one end to either pre-output 1 or output 2. For today, we'll use output 1. Then we're gonna plug the other end into the RCA input of our subwoofer. From here, we're gonna power on our speaker or subwoofer and raise the volume. We'll also wanna be sure to raise the main volume knob on our receiver so that we're sending signal out to our speaker or sub. So now let's hear how our setup sounds with the powered subwoofer. Oh wow, makes a big difference with the sub. That's awesome. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your Rock Zone 8. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.